Hello from the Busy Needle. This is episode 3 of the Tennessee Waltz quilt series I've been working on. This is one of the blocks in the quilt. It's called the 50-440 or fight. And if you know your history, you'll know that was James Polk's rallying cry for his presidential election in the 1800s. And it has to do with the fight for the Oregon Territory. And of course, women couldn't vote then, but they actually made this quilt block, and it was made, I think, put in a magazine and distributed all over the country, and women were making them. And it's still a pretty popular block. A lot of people still use it. It's still called the 50-440 or fight block. And depending on how you put the colors together, it almost gives this 3D effect if you use colors. And you'll learn if you're new to quilting that the colors make all the difference, how you use the lights and darks. And I'll show you another one in a minute, a scrap one I made when I was practicing for this quilt a few days ago. Now, this is at 9.5 inches, but it'll be finished 9. Remember, I did a video on the 1/4 inch seam, so when it's sewn in the quilt, a 1/4 inch on each side after I trim it up, it'll be 9 inches you see on top of the quilt. And it's what we call a 9 patch. That means it has 3 sections by 3 sections, so 9 blocks. Sometimes a 9 patch will just be a simple single block like we see here. But this one's very interesting because besides the center block, all the other 8 patches have to also be made, which we'll look at in a second. I'll show you the different types of blocks, types of segments that make up this block. But first, I'm having to use one hand. Let me show you. Here's a practice piece I did before I started the quilt with just scraps I have around the house. Look at the difference. If you don't put the same colors in these 2 areas, it gives a whole different look to that block. So doing different colors, and sometimes you'll see this where they put 4 squares inside this center one too. So you can just see, this is just scraps I had in my scrap bag I put together to kind of see how this worked, because I'd never made a 50-440 before. Okay, all right, so let's look at what makes up this 50-440 or fight block. Of course, you have a block in the center. So I'm going to lay one out beside as I do. So you have a block of that fabric in the center, just a simple 3.5 inch block. Okay. Then in each corner, you have what we call a 4 patch. So you've got a 4 patch within the 9 patch. So here's the 4 patch. And I'm turning mine with the lights. This is my lights and my darks. And I'm going to do a thing about colors. How the lights and darks really make a difference when you put together a quilt. Once I figured that out, my quilt's changed a lot. Okay, so here's that. So I've got this, and then these corner patches of the 9 patch are actual little 4 patches. Okay, and then you have this block, which is called, some people call this a V block. Some people call this a triangle and a square, and that's your what we call your star points. So that goes around the side. And every block I make, I lay it out like this, because let me tell you, some weird stuff can happen between right here where you're sewing together and when you put it under the needle. So I always lay it out to be sure. See, I got that one backwards. There. So that's how it goes together. And let me show you what can happen. You can also do it this way. Now look at that. It's still a 50-440 or fight, but your colors are different, and it gives it a different shape. Okay, you can turn these back around. I prefer it this way, but that's just a different way you can do it. You can set blocks together and make a pattern your own. That's why it's always good to make a practice. You can turn these in like this. And that gives it a different look. And when put together, they have a different look. But I chose to go with this after I played with it for quite a bit, and sometimes take pictures and look at the pictures. Okay, so this is what I chose, what I thought would look best in my opinion. Okay, now, so there's the history of the block. You see some different configurations. I'm going to be doing a series on how I make 4 patches, and I'm going to do a video, and I'm going to do a video on how to make these triangle and squares later, and some tips and tricks with that. Okay, so there's episode 3, and all of you have a blessed day.